Do we created from nothing? Are we eternal? Or were we created by an external agent? So those are four options that we can actually, reason with regards to our own creation, our own existence. So we can go for the first one. Did we create ourselves?
Okay.
Obviously not.
So if
Oli didn't create Oli.
you think
Muhammad, my Muhammad, by the way.
your belief in reading the
Nice to meet
Quran,
you.
brother, you there?
I died
So we didn't create ourselves, right?
and I
So
didn't follow the
straight away
Quran,
we
I
scratched
would
that
go
off the
to
board.
hell.
Were we
Like
created from nothing?
Christianity.
Well, obviously not, because we came from our
Is it
parents.
the same?
So we didn't just pop into existence.
Not
And likewise, if we don't expect that from like our parents and human beings for anything that we know, why would we expect the universe to just pop into existence? It doesn't really make sense. Nothing, right? Well, are we eternal? Well, obviously not. We were born, right? So this concept of us always existing doesn't make any sense because we have a beginning. What has a beginning, by definition, has no. It's not
Actually, brother, there's
very logical.
frozen again.
So you're left with the only option that we were created by an external agent. Right? So likewise, like you and I are created and born from our parents, likewise, this creation would have come from something external to it, because it cannot create itself. Right? A tree cannot create itself. A rock cannot, duplicate itself, or even just come into existence because of itself. It just doesn't make sense. So these are very simple questions that we can use to, put a stamp and say, well, we have to be created by an external agent. Because that's the only thing that makes sense, rationally. So now, despite, even though we're not using like empirical scientific methods or any deep philosophy or anything, just using simple logic that can be understood by a scholar and a layman,
Yeah.
can bring us to the, essentially the fact that there is something out there that created everything that we know. Mm. And when we observe the world as it is, we don't see anything done by accident. Right? People usually talk about the concept of randomness. We know the term is just something that we use to say that we cannot explain everything factors into why something happens, right? We know there's a bunch of reasons for why something happens. That's why it's not random. But because we don't understand it, we stick it under the definition of random. We just don't get it. So conceptually, we know that there is no such thing as randomness because everything has a reason. So therefore, the universe, our creation, that must have a reason. That must have a purpose, a reason for why it is the way it is. And this points to intelligence, reason, processes, and all of that. That all leads to intelligence and a will to put that stuff in place.
I'll check it out. I'll definitely
Creative power, right? Or just power in general. I mean, we've in recent years we've looked at the biggest, one of the biggest black holes. How powerful they are. Forget the black holes, just the power of our sun. To quote Dr. Octopus and Doc Ock in Spider-Man No Way Home, the power of the sun in the palm of my hand, but yeah, the power of the sun alone. So the one who created that must have so much power that, in order to create something as powerful as that, nuclear fusion and all that, immense power, right? So we can extrapolate that the agent behind the creation has certain attributes, certain qualities about it.
Okay.
And this is all from basic reasoning, from basic questions,
check it out.
are very
I
rational.
definitely should have.
So what do you think
I've
of,
only just started
about
being
what I
more
said
open
so
towards
far?
this kind of stuff, so but I will.
Yeah,
check it
I
out, man.
mean,
Thank you for that.
like you
Thank you for
say,
talking.
it's difficult.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Been great.
difficult
If it's cool, I'm gonna have a
try
little
and
wander around because it's my first time here. But thank you so much for the
rationalize
chat.
because,
Really appreciate it.
like you say,
Thank you for coming by.
not only that, it's such a big.
You take care, mate.
I'll say the word concept. Such a big concept that a world just appeared and it managed to be. Oh, it's one of the only places that we've seen in our known universe that we've explored that's been able to have the life and the technologies that we've got does make one think, huh, how did that happen? How is it just a freak act of nature? Is it just luck? Is it just randomness, as you say, or is there something else? You know, it's definitely a difficult question, and I think sitting down and thinking about it more and more, when you do that, it does give you more, you know, of an inkling of actually, yeah, how did everything that we see come to be? Because it would have to be a lot of randomness to be in this place that we are now. You know, it's like you say, we use the word random for things we can't explain, but it would have to be a lot of crazy randomness to get where we are.
Mm. Well, that's the thing, you know, like I said, conceptually, randomness doesn't actually exist. We only use it because we don't get it, but we know that everything that exists for a reason, exists for a purpose, exists with a design. You know, I mean, and like I said, forget about the universe and stuff. And the questions I proposed to you and answered and reason, right? These are questions that would lead us to acknowledge a creator exists and that that creator has these at least these qualities about it due to what we see from the horizons. And now, for example, fingerprint. Not a single human being on the same on the face of the earth has the same fingerprint as another. Not one.
That is crazy.
Yeah, and so this is not just you can't put it down to randomness, right? Because randomness, like it's like saying if you throw a dice, right, randomly, right, or coin, you're gonna get the same result eventually. But when you have things like the fingerprint, where you don't ever get the same result, this points to someone who's purposefully put that there, put that in place, and so much so that you know, we've only got like today we've got about 7 billion, you know, population worldwide, and not a single person has thing. And you take that back all the way to the history of mankind, the early history of mankind that we know. How many billions of people, and yet not one fingerprint is the same as another?
He's the best of the creators.
Now, as a skeptic might say, well, how do you know that? You haven't witnessed or scanned the fingerprints of those who have come before you. Well,
He's God of
likewise in
everyone, not only
science,
of
when
Israel. He's
people
God of
they
everyone.
take small samples to test a bigger theory, right? And based on a small sample, they'd be able to make conclusions and theories and whatnot. So based on a 7 billion population where no
Even God, you want to
two
take him.
fingerprints are the same, you can infer rationally that those who came before us also shared the same qualities as us and had unique fingerprints. We just didn't know it. So the power, the just the knowledge
Continue the
is
discussion with the
infinite,
brother.
essentially. You know, because
Let's move over there.
if you put
Maybe
if
it's
you and
a
I
little bit
were put
quiet.
in a room, or the 7 billion of us were put in a room, and we were told to design 7 billion different things, we wouldn't. We wouldn't be able to, right? We'd clash things with other people, but we have the perfect example where there are no clashes. Every fingerprint is unique.
Which
So,
also makes it a bit more crazy because you think about like having uniqueness. So, you know, you've got like technology that can, you know, give you unique authentication codes, but that's something that's been made. Whereas people having unique fingerprints, that's just like, that's nature, it's biological, it's not something that we have any control over, which makes it, like you say,
yeah.
how did that become? How is it possible that
Mm.
that just naturally occurs?
Yeah. And but the questions, like I said, the questions that I've put forward and the examples that I've put forward, would you agree that they do indeed point to a creator, rationally speaking, or is sort of
I
not?
mean, to be honest, it's something that I've thought about a lot, you know. And I do agree, to be honest. One thing with religion, because I've looked into, you know, religion a bit before what I was talking about. One thing for me is I don't know how religion fits into my, you know, life. I think
Mm,
that's one of the biggest things. I don't
yeah.
see how I fit into religion. You know, growing up at school where you get religious education and that kind of stuff. When we were doing those kind of studies, when we were studying certain bits, I was like, I don't know how I fit into that or that fits into me or yeah. I think that's why there's always seemed to have been a bit of a disconnect, especially with like at home.
Right.
I say my family's not religious. I mean my dad's side of the family, they're religious, but
Mm.
you know, I've never really
Yeah.
been at that side of the family, so I've never been involved in that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a bit weird because I've never seen how I fit into that because there's some things in religion, and I think it's like anything. You sometimes see the worst of things. It gives you a
Mm.
bad impression overall compared
Yeah, true.
to. It can be one bad thing compared to 500 good things, but you'll look at the bad thing more than you'll look at the good
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah,
it's
I
that
agree with
kind.
you. Yeah. Well, and this is why we say to people, we look at the teachings, not the people who, not the followers, right? You judge any religion based on its followers, no matter how good the teaching is, you're not going to accept it because humans have a tendency to rebel, you know. Um,
Yeah.
for you, the question now, like, and we'll get to the point of, how religion fits in your life. But we do have to get over the hurdle of, you know, the acknowledging the existence of a creator. Because what is religion without a creator? So we don't, like the way us as Muslims are, uh, taught to think is to not put the cart before the horse, right? And to ensure that our foundational beliefs is something that we can rationalize. And this is why when it comes to the religion of Islam, there are very few things that we hold to in terms of faith. Now, yes, we say we believe that God exists because at the end of the day, as much as I can explain it rationally, I cannot point to you and say, look, by the way, Ollie, look, there's God, right? Can't do that.
Mm.
So hence why it ultimately it goes, there's that element of faith to it. But why is that faith there? It's because we go down a logical, rational, and evidentiary trail that leads us to think, well, you know what? That makes sense. Why shouldn't I believe in that? Right? And that's the question we end up asking. Why shouldn't we? As opposed to why should we? Because
Mm-hmm.
we've made that journey. And there are many but to come to the point, because you seem like you agree with the concept of a creator through this line of reasoning and whatnot. But with regards to religion, now obviously I'm going to speak about Islam because this is what I believe in. This is what I know most about. Um, this is not to say that I haven't looked at other religions. I have. But with regards to Islam, why I'm a believer and why I think you should be as well, and how religion will conform to it, to your life, is first and foremost, religion is not going to take your identity away. You're still going to be Ollie. You're still going to be whatever nationality you are. Your parents are going to be the same people. You're going to be good by your parents. You're going to do everything like you normally do. However, the guidance that religion will give you will protect you from that which it will harm you and elevate those good things about you and ensure that you are protected from harms of society, from people trying to take away your identity, and you will live a good life. Now, I'm not saying that you, as a non-believer, is living a bad life, because some people who don't believe in Islam live better lives than Muslims, right? Might be a Muslim who might believe in God and stuff, but is a freaking alcoholic. And you might have an atheist who is not only sober but thriving because he saved his wealth and invested it, and very rational. So this is not to say that you can't be, a good person in that sense, but for us, and then again, you have that base of morality. So you have an identity, you have a family, because obviously you end up uh, having a belief that is shared by now 1.8, nearly 2 billion people, right, around the world. So it's a massive family that people inherit when they do accept Islam. Does it mean they're gonna fall out with them? Yes, that's what you do with family, right? You're gonna fall out. You're gonna have, but you're gonna have love for one another as well, and you do. So you do gain a lot. It doesn't really change who you are. Rather, it elevates who you are. It keeps you the same. And this is something we learned from our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because there's this companion of his, Omar, right? And he was a harsh person, right? Very harsh. Now, the Prophet, peace be upon him, didn't try to change his harshness. What he did, he elevated that. Not to mean that he got even more harsh. He elevated it by ensuring that he taught him how to direct his harshness, when to use it, when not to use it, right? And to be wise about it, right? So this is how things, people. We don't seek to change you as a person. This is not what the purpose of religion is. This is not what the purpose of Islam is. Otherwise, you lose your identity, right? And what is religion if not giving you an identity? So if you do accept Islam, you'd still be Ollie. You don't have to change your name. Some people do because they like it. You know, they like to adopt a new name, but you don't have to. You don't have to start wearing Arab clothing, right? You know, 7th century desert stuff, in order to fit in. No, right? Because indeed, this religion is meant for mankind. Mankind is of many ethnicities and cultures, right? So if you worry about you not fitting in with Islam or Islam not fitting with you, this is something you don't need to worry about. And you will always have brothers and sisters that will help you fit in, you know, in terms of uh, like if you're not sure about something, you'll always have someone that can help you out, right? If someone bullies you and tries to, you know, really sort of degrade you because you've changed your religion, you're going to have brothers and sisters to back you up. These are things that happen, right? This is the reality, and we're not here to tell you that it's going to be a fantastical thing. That would be a lie, and it would negate the whole point, right? So this is the realities of the religion. But when you adopt it, so what would you adopt if you do accept? Now, first of all, foremost, you would accept that the creator
What's going
exists.
on?
And you'd actually be grateful, right?
Hello, more.
Now,
My bad.
for okay.
What's good,
Um,
Ahmed?
so yeah,
Pardon?
you'd be grateful to your creator, right? Now, one thing we say with regards to our relationship creator, so it is a
Hi.
personal
What's
relationship.
up?
If we say
Don't try
you
to crash
acknowledge
me.
him and you try
Sorry.
to worship him, then
Guy's a
being
daywalker.
grateful
Run.
because you end up
Can you guys hear
being
me?
grateful for what he has done for you, because if he's your creator, then he's
Yeah, I
the
can
one
hear
that's
you,
given you
sister.
your eyes, your
Monk the
hands,
Funk.
your mouth, your nose, the ability to taste good food, to hear good things, to hear the voice of your mother,
How's it going?
you know, to hear the voice of your spouse, children, to be able to see them. You know, some people don't have those blessings, right? And this is why I don't know if you've seen any of these
Yeah,
memes
you found
where
me.
you see,
Unmute,
Hey,
Tim.
what do you call it?
I
A
don't
Who's
know
man
if
this?
we should talk at the same
who's
time.
got
They
no
can
legs
probably
and he
hear
sees a man
us.
who's walking.
Okay?
And a
Hey,
man who's
Tim.
walking, he sees a
Who's
person
this?
on a bike. A person on a bike sees a person
Next
in
to
a
us.
car, and a person in a car sees a person who's got a helicopter, and a person who's got a helicopter sees a person who's
Sup,
got a
Justine?
plane,
You
and they
wandering
all
top
envy
of
one another
you.
because they have more blessings.
Hi.
For us, it's
Hi,
the
Hey.
opposite,
I'm
right?
just trying to figure out how
For
to
us, we are
play
taught,
this game.
look at the people who have
So
less
are
than you,
we.
so that you may be thankful for what
All
you
right,
have.
Tim. You want
Right?
to dip out?
Because the psychology works differently. If you
Yeah.
look at people that have more than you,
All right.
right?
How
You're
can I
always
go
in
to
a
your
constant
house?
state of jealousy, envy, which are
Let's go
negative
home.
stuff.
Menu.
But if you look at people who are below you, you
You want,
end
you
up
want,
being
who
humble
wants to be? Oh yeah,
by saying, you know what, I have something.
No.
I shouldn't throw it
Let me
away.
go
I
home.
shouldn't be ungrateful about the blessings that I have. And if the
All right,
Creator
I'm
gave
going
it to
home.
me, then how could I be a moral person if I do not
Make me.
acknowledge Him and love Him and worship Him for the stuff that He has given me? Countless
Oh, what
things.
are we playing?
You know, I mean, we're not even in control of the very breath that we take. You know, and as Akon says, live every day as if it's going to be your last, right? If you listen to his song Ghetto, right? We have the same saying in Islam, right? Live every day as if it's your last, because you're not in control of your life in terms of when you're gonna, when you're born and when you die. The things you do in life, yes, you're in control of. Your life in of itself, you're not in control of. So be thankful for it. Be thankful for the time that you have. Be thankful for the uh, the uh, the things you're able to do with that time. Right? And in the Quran, Allah mentions to us by time, and He swears by time. And the reason Allah swears by time is because it's a very important thing. Time is an enemy for us all, right? If it's not used properly. So He says, but by time, mankind is a lost, except those who believe. Yeah, and those who do good, and and do good in patience, also with patience and truth. Right? So these are very basic. Yeah, sure.
Thing that gets me with religion is in a couple of thing that I've always seen as kind of like a gate to entry, if you will, which kind of has been a little bit watered down because one of my good friends is practicing Muslim, and so she's kind of like what I would probably say, and I think she said it herself, kind of like a modern day Muslim in the sense that she follows the religion, but she doesn't follow everything in the religion in the sense that there's certain things that don't really fit into her lifestyle kind of thing. How do you feel about things like that? Is that something that's widely accepted? Is that something that happens? How does that kind of fit into religion? Because if the religion is one thing that says X, Y, and Z, and then you decide to follow X and Y but not Z, how does that kind of fit in?
Yeah, it doesn't work. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he mentions, he says to us, will you follow part of the scripture and leave part of the scripture? Like, will you? Like, what sense does it make? If you believe that this came from your creator who knows the best things for you, why would you pick and choose? If you're going to accept it wholeheartedly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you do. I agree. There are many modern day Muslims. There's a modern day Muslim. It doesn't really carry any weight because Quran makes the claim that religion is complete and perfect, i.e., you have everything you need to live your life as a 21st century human being. Bearing in mind, this is a book that was revealed to us 1400 years ago, in the 7th century, and yet the legislation, and the rules, and the regulations, and wisdom, and all of that is applicable today. Now, this causes us to think, right? First of all, as I mentioned, if you're going to accept the religion, why are you going to pick and choose from it? Right? You're not really accepting it in that way. Right? If you accept something wholeheartedly, you don't pick and choose. So it doesn't make sense. This is the argument that Allah gives to us. What are you doing, right? Like why would you pick and choose? And secondly, when you think about this, right, that you have a scripture and a tradition that spans 1400 years, and yet it hasn't changed. The legislation hasn't changed. It hasn't been updated like you have with government legislations, and different acts. The Act of Nine, the work acts of the work. What was it? What act of work? Or can't remember what it is now. But and then you have the various editions in 19 something and 1999 and 2002, whatever.
Health and
Everything's
safety at
getting
work.
the Health and Safety at Work Act, yeah, 1978. And then that got updated and whatnot. So, um, the Quran, Islam, its legislation and all of that, it didn't get updated. It remained the same. And yet it's still applicable today in the 21st century. So, yes, if you accept something, naturally, not all of the legislation is going to apply to your life, right? Because you're most likely not going to do everything that requires every bit of legislation. The things that do apply in your life, you apply. And if you understand why it is the way it is, what the wisdom behind it is, then it increases your faith because you get it, right? And this is why when I speak to people like yourself, I don't want to tell you, by the way, the Quran is right, you should believe in God and become a Muslim. Say, repeat after me. No. I want you to understand why I, as a Muslim, believe what I believe. That you can recognize it to be a belief that is based upon a foundation that is based upon rationality, reason, evidence, investigation, critique, right? To look at things from different angles, to see if you can, poke a hole in it. Right? Hence why even when it came to the concept of the creator, we went through multiple options, try to pick each one down, right, and see what we're left with. And that's how we come to our conclusions. Right? We look at things, we don't just make a guess and we say, oh, wow, well, this feels nice, therefore it's true. No, who said that? Alcohol, I've been told, feels very good. right? When people go out on a Friday night, feels very good. Drinking alcohol, is it good for you? Oh, right. So a good feeling doesn't equate to something being true or good. So this is why I'm not explaining Islam to you from a good, a giddy feeling like, oh, yeah, I'm a Muslim and it feels so good. It's changed my life. Yay. That's not what Islam is, right? Some people accept Islam and they go have a horrible time, right? In terms of trials and tribulations. You know? Some people will accept Islam and then the next day they get news that they've got cancer. Does it mean Islam is not true? No. It's just that's when they found out. Now they have Islam to be used to be patient in it. In fact, it's a blessing, right? Because now they've got a tool that will help them deal with the news that has come to them, right? And we see in the history of Islam persecutions of Muslims when they first started preaching, and how many people were actually killed just for the sake of believing, right? This is what Allah says to us. He says, that Islam is easy. He has made Islam easy for us, but we make it hard for ourselves because we pick and choose, or because we don't educate ourselves about the wisdoms of it. And this is what it's about, understanding the religion, and that way you increase your faith. And we have the example of this in the Quran with the Prophet Abraham. Um, he asked God, he was like, "But show me how you raised the dead." And Allah responded to him and he said, "Oh, Abraham, do you not believe?" You know, and Abraham, and of course, God already knows, but he asked these questions in order for him to later on retell these things um, for us. And so Abraham responds, he says, "No, I mean, I believe, but if you show me, it will increase me in my faith." So this knowledge, understanding of how God raises the dead, this increases them in faith. Right? This is the whole point of our education. So Islam is a religion that encourages education and research in order for you to understand it and adopt it as something that you can rationalize. So when someone asks you, "Hey, why did you accept Islam? You used to be an atheist. Why did you accept Islam?" You can tell them why. You're not going to say because the Quran said so. You're going to tell them because I went through an investigation. I reasoned. And this is why I believe what I believe. And they won't be able to challenge that because now you've given rational reasoning. And this is
So
a
let
good
me ask
position
you
to
a
be in.
question about it then. So
Sure.
I'll be real with you. So as I was saying, my father's side of the family, their religion. And so I'm gay. The particular reason in terms of why I kind of never myself get involved in that is because my father's side of the family, as part of they're Catholic, there's a part of the Bible which is open to interpretation a lot of the time, and certain people say X and certain people say Y. They're the kind of people that say, "Oh, that's a bad thing. That goes against our religion. That goes against our God," kind of stuff. Now, when you have things like that, is there a lot of that in like Islam, things that are open to interpretation? Are there a lot of things where
Yeah.
because
So,
I feel like religion isn't black and white. It's very
no, of course not.
very open to
Yeah,
people's,
well, here's the thing. In Islam, because it is the claim, obviously, is that it's the perfect and complete religion, i.e., everything is covered, including homosexuality, right? So for us, it is black and white in terms of what to do with certain cases, right? And we'd speak about homosexuality. Now, the question of why is it bad, right? Because Islam believes the same thing. We believe homosexuality is bad, right? Whether you're gay or lesbian, right? Or bisexual. Or any of the, pronouns that are you being used now. So
yeah.
why is that? Now I'm going to speak particularly to you because I'm speaking to you. So as a gay man, as a homosexual, why is that considered bad? Now, first of all, well, it's because it goes against our creation. If we are created in a certain way and we behave in a way that goes against it, there will be ramifications. Now, even if we look at it from a scientific aspect, now, obviously we know the act of penetration, right? Now, the argument I've heard, which is true, right, that the male G spot is located in, near the rectum, which is 100% true. Okay, and that's why people will claim that it is natural for a man to be penetrated there. But is that true? No, because we can make the same argument for a woman. A woman's G spot is located in the front. However, there are women and men who like to engage with heterosexual relationships anally. Why? Surely, if it's supposed to be natural, you would, for a woman, you do through the front, right? Only because that's where the G spot is. Right? So this argument doesn't make sense. Also, medically, those homosexuals who conduct in intercourse, they have an increase in cancer, rectal cancer, right? Due to the fact that that area is not being used as intended. It's used to, excrete things rather than have things inserted. The only time something would be inserted would be for a medical need, right? So this is the nature of the male human body, is that that area is meant to just excrete. And obviously, because it is such a filthy area, due to the what we naturally pass through it, to insert a member into it increases the risk of disease. So naturally speaking, it is bad, right? And when we look at the statistics, right, the homosexual population make about 3% globally. Right? And yet, 80% of sexual diseases come from them, black group. Reason being is because they engage in acts uh, that are not meant to be done by nature. And likewise, from an evolutionary perspective, or for a person who doesn't believe in God and believes in evolution, if you believe in the concept of natural selection and survival of the fittest, from an evolutionary perspective, the homosexual should not exist because they cannot procreate due to male on male intimacy, where procreation is not possible. Now, today, people will say, well, it is possible because you can have a test tube baby, right? A homosexual couple could have a test tube baby. Yeah, but you can only do that if you had access to a female egg. So, no, you cannot procreate in any way as a homosexual couple. You need the involvement of the female because that is what is natural. So, from an evolutionary perspective, it shouldn't exist. A homosexual should not exist from a natural selection point of view. They should go extinct because they don't, contribute to procreation and survivability of the race. Medically, it's proven to be harmful and cause a risk in disease and cancer and all of that. And naturally speaking, it is not how our bodies are designed. And this comes from the Creator. So therefore, the Creator has declared it as being something that is not good. Now, does the Creator acknowledge, does Allah acknowledge homosexual tendencies? Yes. Is it haram? Is it forbidden to have homosexual tendencies? No. Because Allah doesn't actually condemn a person for what they feel. He condemns a person for what they do. So this is why in Islam, the act of homosexuality, right, actually going through with it is forbidden, right? Because then it leads to these things, these dangers, right, like medical diseases and loose, because there were reports and studies made where some homosexual men, as they grow older, uh, they, they have no control over their bowel movements because of penetration. It's just really loosened it and it's gone against what's supposed to happen. So for that reason, you've got a bunch of reasons why that's not allowed. Islam explains it, right? Whereas in the Catholic religion, they'll just tell you God said it's bad and you'll get punished for it, and that's it, right? They don't have the explanations that we do for it. So we explain it rationally and we tie it back to God because God is the one that created us. He knows what's best for us. Because he knows what's best for us, he tells us to stay away from it. So he doesn't allow us to even come near it. He's like, this thing, it will lead to something worse. Therefore, forget about getting to the place that is worse. Stop right now. Right? Just don't do it now, lest you keep going. And we can see this with porn, for example, right? What happens with people who consume porn? Start off really vanilla, right? But then they end up, because it's not enough, they end up watching the most extreme and vile things in order to satisfy their desire. But why? And then you see that progression from bad to worse. Oh, what does Allah say to us? Don't watch porn, right? Don't eat pork. Don't consume alcohol. right? Why? Because yeah, the harm might be small to begin with, but it's going to grow. And him being the creator who wants the best for us, he doesn't want you to go for you, to be bad for you in the first place. So he tells you to stop before it even gets bad, right? So this is the wisdom behind it. And here's the thing as well. A lot of people speak about the punishment for homosexuals in Islam, which is to kill them, right? And this is true. However, they put it in a blanket statement. Right? This is not wrong. This is what is wrong, right? There is context to it. Now, a homosexual in Islam, if they were to engage in homosexual intimacy in private, no one can touch them. The only time
Homosexual.
they can be condemned to execution
How did you
is
get up there?
if they acted on sexual penetration in public and it is witnessed,
Down.
and then it has to go through the judicial system. And so the person might say,
Recording
well,
in
why would you
progress.
even execute such
Anonymous
people?
UK.
Because surely all they're doing is expressing love for each one another, right? Well, no, because here's the thing. If you love someone, you would want what's best for them. Now, if you are a person who will uh, penetrate another man, be penetrated by another man, knowing the implications of
Penetration.
such an act, i.e. the
Penetration, right?
potential for it to lead to cancer or any other medical diseases, could you call that love? If you know that you are willingly, potentially putting your partner at risk medically, that you could essentially be killing them slowly, that's not really love, is it? And as I mentioned, like when people say, well, why execution? It's like because in Islam it's like a cancer, right? If something is going to lead to a spread of disease, which we now know is the case, right? We've seen it with AIDS, we've seen it with all the other uh, STDs that have been transmitted and how widespread it is now. Um, and obviously now I'm speaking specifically to things that are created by homosexual acts and how widespread it is. You're essentially killing other people, right? It's not just about you and your partner anymore. It's about killing other people. So therefore, that if you're killing other people, that warrants the death penalty because you're killing people. Therefore, you are condemned to death as well. And it's another layer because now if someone is actually executed for publicly, doing penetration with another man, and they get executed, it puts a fear factor into the society. Like you're not, like what, and then it puts it in people's heads. I don't want to do this because I don't want to get executed. Therefore, that will put people off the street. Right? Homosexuals will not do this on the street. They would keep it private. Therefore, it would limit, if there was any disease, it would be limited because it's now not openly transmitted and whatnot. So there is multiple layers to it. Right? The stuff that we can explain rationally. Is it a harsh punishment? Yes, it is. This is the nature of harsh punishments. To deter people. But the conditions for them to be acted upon. So in order for someone to be executed, it goes through a very, vigorous system. Like at the end of the day, how many homosexuals are you going to catch on the street doing penetration, witnessed by four other people? You're not going to really see that. But how likely is it even that people are going to be executed? Not very likely. But the threat is there to ensure that that's the case. It remains that way. Mm. So this is the wisdoms behind homosexuality. This is why we say it's wrong. What do you think about it? Now, if you have no, before I let you answer, if you are a man who wants to adopt a religion, but you are struggling with your homosexual feelings, don't let that deter you, right? Don't let that deter you, because Allah will accept you as a homosexual, right? Yes, it's an evil thing, but it doesn't nullify you as being a believer, right? So if you do choose to accept Islam, Islam will welcome you as a believer. You will be our brother, and we will recognize that you have a certain difficulty with regards to your sexual orientation and how you feel, right? Um, and this is something that we can help you work with, right? Now, I personally know someone who is a Muslim and is a homosexual. He doesn't act on his homosexuality because he believes Islam is true, right? But therefore, this is why he's not married. He doesn't have kids. But he is a homosexual, he doesn't engage in homosexual relationships because he loves his creator more than he loves his own desires. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, have you seen one who takes his own desire as God, as his God, right? Um, because if you act on your desires, um, you could potentially lead yourself to ruin. Hence, homosexual acts leading to disease, because it is based on desire. And is it based on love? No, because if you loved someone, you do what's best for them. Penetrating them, knowing that you could potentially give them a disease, is not love, right? It's like in Guardians of the Galaxy where Peter Quill's father said, oh, I was upset when I had to put that tumor in your mother's head. I loved her." What? That's why Peter Quill smashed him up, right? I don't know if you're a Marvel fan, but but
You are.
yeah, yeah, I am. But yeah, so I've explained to you the Islamic concept in regards to homosexuality, what is bad. What do you think about it?
Yeah, like I say, it's always been something that
I'll give it a chance later when I go to sleep.
it's difficult because a few reasons, and I'll tell you the reasons why I have that are other kind of like gates to entry for myself uh, to religion, because like you say, so um, our God says obviously that homosexuality is bad, but it's acknowledged. Get that? It's the same in Christianity. So it's acknowledged, and they say it's bad to engage in the sexual side of it. Totally understand that side of it. The thing is, and the thing that I struggle with, and it's not just with myself, but as a whole, is if God is the creator of all things, myself included, yourself, everyone, the thing I struggle with understanding from a religious point of view is if God is the creator of all things, why would God create someone, for example, myself, speaking for myself, why would God create me as a homosexual if he knows it's not a good thing? Why would God allow people, heterosexuals to have children, but then allow those children to have the suffering that they have? There's certain families that have difficulties and their children have those things, there's children dying from suffering. How is it that God can allow himself to create someone then going through that suffering? There's a lot of suffering going in the world, and that's what I struggle with the most is
Okay,
if God actually is the creator of everything, how can he allow that to happen?
Okay, right. So because at the end of the day, we've got a very small picture. We see the suffering, and that's it, right? That's as far as we see it. Now, with regards to creating someone who is a homosexual, this is not what Allah creates, right? Allah creates everyone to be heterosexual. This is why, with regards to the claim of the gay gene, scientists have done study on it, and they said that there is no gene set that determines sexual orientation. None whatsoever. Right? So you're not created or born gay. This is something that you adopt later on, right? You feel, maybe, there are multiple factors that, come into why a person becomes a homosexual, right? Um, and there are so many, I wouldn't try to presume which one put you in that direction. Now, at the end of the day, suffering doesn't occur. Like, yes, he knows that people are going to suffer. Why does he create them in the first place? Because this world is not meant to be a utopia. It's not meant to be. The utopia is meant in the hereafter. He's told us very clearly that this life is for us to worship him, and it's a test to see who would do good, who would be patient. Because if we don't have suffering, we don't know what good times are. You wouldn't know how Ken feels if you hard week at work, right? You just wouldn't. You wouldn't enjoy the weekend, right? So suffering is a necessity in order for us to actually value life. Now, for those people who suffer greatly, for example, people who suffer from hunger or starvation or babies that get killed, Allah has a bigger plan than that. Yes, suffering is there, and it seems like it's a long time because for us, it is a long time. If you suffer for 24 hours straight, if your stomach is, fasting from hunger for 24 hours straight, it feels like a lifetime. But it's not. If you endure it with patience and goodwill, and and when you die, Allah rewards you for
How do
that.
you turn it up?
Right?
Sorry, I'm talking to my brother.
Yes, it's all right. Um. So.
Of course, I do that 21.
So.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go to hell. It doesn't seem
So, and the thing is, paradise. Yeah, we believe in paradise, of course, right? And we believe that in the day of judgment there is justice to be done. So at the end of the day, people starve and everything and whatnot, and all the suffering that happens. It happens because we do it. It's not because he wants it for us. He doesn't want it for us, but he's given us our free will. So we choose to do this to each other. So for us to blame God, it's sort of a catch-22 when we start complaining about this stuff, because we're like, on one hand, we're like, well, why did God create us with free will? Because with our free will, we cause harm to one another. On the other side, it's like, if we were created, without a choice, we'd complain about that. It's like, why didn't God give us a choice? You know, He's just created us as robots. But sort of catch-22. So which way do you like it? At the end of the day,
I get that.
we have to acknowledge that God has created us with the capacity to do good and bad. It's up to us what we do with it. Right? So the ball is in our court. So
So in the
if
sense
we
of,
see
in the
suffering,
sense
it's
of
because
that
we've done
then,
it. Yeah.
in the sense of that then, obviously, like for example, you're saying, if we see suffering, it's brought on by itself. So in the sense of like, obviously, um, in some countries, there's severe issues in terms of malnutrition because there's just not enough food, not enough water. Obviously, like in the case of like children, for example. So something I've heard in terms of like, and it probably gets thrown around, and you've probably heard it before. It won't be anything new. Is that for Muslims, this life is kind of like like you said yourself, like a trial to see how you do, and then next life or however that works, because I don't know. I'm not really, in that, but the next life kind of is like your main life kind of deal, if you will. That's just me being me.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, how can it be that, and this is where I'm saying that how can God allow suffering, is how can he allow, for example, children that are born into that, which literally have no control, like you're saying, obviously God made us so we have control and freedom over ourselves, but a child doesn't, and
No,
people in
right.
those countries that have no food, no water, they don't. So how does that work? Because you're not going to get to the point of being able to do that.
No, it's a very good question. So in Islam, it's very clear between the distinction of predestination and free will. So free will is the things that we get to choose. You're right. You're right to point out that people who are born where there is malnutrition, they don't have a choice in the matter. So, and likewise, I didn't have a choice in the matter to be born into a country where I don't suffer from malnutrition. Right, I'm in the UK. So the thing is, here's where the justice is as well, right? And the thing is, those who are born into places of malnutrition, Allah says in the Quran that He does not burden a soul with more than what it can bear. So the fact that I was born in London, not having to suffer from malnutrition, is actually a testament that I will not be able to bear malnutrition. And yet those who are born in a state of suffering have a stronger character than me, have a stronger ability to deal with that, to survive it. And you might say, well, yeah, there are babies that don't survive it. With Allah, anyone who dies under the age of puberty attains paradise automatically, right, just straight up.
Okay.
And paradise, because you said you don't know much about the afterlife in Islam and everything. In paradise, it's like to put it bluntly and very simplistically, we say that it's a place where no man has seen, no man has heard of, no man can imagine. And uh, you know, for more detailed things, it has rivers of wine, milk, rivers of water, for which when you drink, you never get thirsty again. You just drink it because it tastes really good. The houses are made of marble, pearls, gold, silver, bricks of gold and silver. houses of pearls. The soil is made of saffron. If you look at a bird in the sky and you feel hungry, it drops in exactly the way you want it cooked. Tender, luscious fruits are something you would have never thingy. The shades of the trees expand miles, and top of that, like you as a person, you will never have to go to a toilet, for example, right? You'll never get constipation, diarrhea, you'll never need to wee. The way you excrete is actually through your sweat. You actually sweat. That's how you would excrete, and it will take, and your sweat will be like perfume. When you enter paradise, your wife you would stare at your wife for 40 years because she's so beautiful. You turn away, you look again, and she's even more beautiful, and you look at her for another 40 years. She constantly grows more beautiful, right? Obviously, for you as a homosexual, it's not as appealing, but if inshallah, if you make it to that point, it would be because you would be returned to to what you were originally created as a man who is would be made for the company of women of a woman. Um, and likewise, so it's just pure comfort. You'll have slaves that wait on you all the time, right? And obviously they're not like mistresses or something. They're specific creation. I won't get tired from doing that. So it's like you're gonna be thingy. And likewise with the wine, it's not gonna be harmful. You're not gonna get a hangover. It's gonna be absolutely brilliant with none of the harmful effects. You have all of that for eternity, and on top of that, no 2 days are the same, and every day is better than the last for eternity. So these are the descriptions. This is what these people. This is a glimpse. Yeah, it's a glimpse of heaven.
We don't really
Yeah.
have religion.
I got you.
Now here's the thing. Forget about there's gonna we have a narration in our tradition. On the day of judgment, there's gonna be two people. One person
We don't really have religion, so
who has had the most lavish life.
that's why I came
Yeah,
here.
but he died a disbeliever. He was ungrateful to his creator. He did bad things, but he had a lavish life. And Allah dips him into hellfire for a second. And then he asks him, have you known any pleasure in the world? And he says, by Allah, I swear to you, I have not known any pleasure in this world, in that world, right, on earth. And he will take a person who has lived his entire life suffering, his entire life suffering. Forget about being a baby who suffered for a bit and died because obviously they're a baby, they gave out very quickly. We're talking about a person who's lived their entire life suffering. And he will dip him into paradise for a second, and he'll ask him, have you known any suffering in the world? You say, by Allah, I swear to you, I have not known a single day of suffering, a single second of suffering. So this is the recompense for people who do suffer unjustly, and for those people who actually are put in that situation by God Himself. So He puts them there because He knows they can handle it, first of all, and if they die, this is actually a blessing from Him, because at the end of the day, there must be some days where we think, like I've definitely had some of these days where I'll be like, you know what, God, just take me. I've just had enough. Like I would rather be dead than live some of my days, right? So for these people who do die, they don't have to go through the crazy stuff that we have to go through. So in a sense, it's a blessing, and especially if they die young and they've got eternity in paradise without having to deal with what you and I have to deal with. What a blessing! So the problem of suffering, well, is something that is definitely something that we don't enjoy. We acknowledge it as a reality, but we turn it into a blessing because that's what it is. Any trial or tribulation comes to us as a blessing because what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So no matter what happens to you, it will be good for you. It will be good for you. But you have to have your mindset in a way that you can actually act on that, because it is inherently good. You just have to find what's good about it, and use that and utilize that.
Maybe in the future they will.
This is why when we look at the greatest leaders in history, they had hardship, right? They didn't become leaders because they were bureaucrats. They became leaders because they had to fight for it. They had to go through stuff. Doctors, nurses, they all had to go through sacrifices that they have to make, right? Then, I mean, especially during the pandemic, right? Nurses having to do 12-hour shifts. They have and then they have to go home and cook for their husbands because they're doing 12-hour shifts. because if they don't do the 12-hour shifts, they'll lose their job because of the pandemic and whatnot, right? All of these sacrifices, and a lot of people have come out on the other side of the pandemic stronger. Our immune systems are now coping with COVID. Yeah, we're now dealing with it on our own, with our own, and our immune systems are stronger. So every trial, and the thing about the Muslim is we take comfort in knowing that nothing will befall us except if Allah wills it. And if Allah wills it, it is good for us because it makes us stronger. There's a benefit to it. But we have to be patient. We have to be content. And if we are patient and content and accept it, then we see the goodness that comes from it, rather than the negativity from it. But when people think about the suffering, they're seeing a very small thing. They're seeing just the suffering. They're not seeing what's behind that and the wisdom behind that. And this is what we can explain. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean,
does it make sense?
Yeah, I get it. You know, it's nice. So in that sense, it's just one of those things, isn't it? I suppose because I've never been brought up on it, and it's the first time actually it's a different concept to talk about, to think about, compared to how I would normally think. And I was because of that, it's something to have to ponder over. It is. In some respects, yeah, I get that. You know, if that's the case, and obviously the thing you were saying about people who are born into it, and if they have no choice in it, you know, they ascend, you know, before, regardless of what happens, depending on their age. Makes more sense. Yeah, it makes sense to me, you know, because that's the one thing I could never get my head around is if people are born into that and they don't even have the chance to kind of like prove themselves and show their worth. How is that fair? You know, so that makes more sense to me.
Yeah. So this is why we're taught to definitely take care for them. This is why charity is a massive thing for us, because yes, we know that God puts them in the world in this way, but he makes it a duty upon us to give them money. So like for us we have two concepts. We have charity, and then we have something called zakat. Now charity is optional. We do it because you know, this is what we're taught. We're taught to be gracious and to give and to feel for others and to want for others what we would want for ourselves. Because if I was in a place where I was starving, I would want someone to give me money to have a little bit of food, right? Naturally. So why would I not do it for someone else? And when I'm explaining things to you, Islam teaches us to be visionary, to expand our minds, to think about concepts and situations in the bigger picture. This is what we're taught and how to do it, how to expand our minds. So as you mentioned, you know, yes, you didn't think of it before because you're not used to this sort of line of thinking, and you know there are certain things that you've been brought up with and whatnot. Now you've been introduced into something that looks at these very same concepts on a bigger scale, right? And the wisdoms behind it, the explanations, facts behind the matter, and whatnot. And obviously, with regards to the heaven and hell and stuff, this is of course part of the belief, and obviously because we can how did we come to this belief? Because we rationalize that there is a creator, and we rationalize that the Quran is indeed from God, and all of that, right? And we go through all of this, and that's why we believe in heaven and hell and what will happen on the day of judgment. But even without having to go through all of that, just explaining those concepts makes more sense because, as I said, Islam has everything. Any subject that you want to know about, Islam will cover it. They will give you guidance for it. It's not about just information. It's about how will it help you. So this goes back to the question of how will religion fit with you, you know, in your life. That's how. Wisdoms will, and the guidance for it you can apply in your own life where it's applicable, right? And you know, going back to your homosexuality, if you accept Islam, does that mean that you are gonna be put to death for being a homosexual? Absolutely not, right? Because this is something between you and God, right? And if you love then you will do your best to refrain from these acts You will understand why. And this is the thing. It will be easier because if you understand something, it becomes easier to do it, right? As opposed to doing something like if I try to fix my car without understanding, without having any mechanical knowledge, I'll, you know, be extremely difficult. I might even make it worse. If I get it, I understand it, it will be easy. So it's knowledge is very important for us, and because it helps us deal with the realities of this world, it helps us deal with our own struggles. Like me, for example, I have my weakness. I have areas in my life that I need to improve on. There are certain desires that I have that I need to keep in check, right? And me as a heterosexual, me as someone who's not yet married, I have my desires, but I cannot act on them because I understand why it's bad and everything, and it's helped me rein it in, right, and keep it under control. Yeah, for us, the biggest struggle is always going to be within ourselves, right? This is the biggest struggle for a believer, but it's the most rewarding because if you can keep yourself under control and you can keep yourself disciplined, and that oozes around you, you know, and then you are taken to be as a integrity, discipline, command, authority, man of your word, you know, and these are all things that are admirable in society. And if every single man had this, and every single woman had these qualities, society will be great. Are we doing it? Unfortunately not. So forget about what other people do. If you wanted to take Islam as your religion and adopt it as your religion, the guidance. Don't feed off the people. Forget the people. I'm telling you this as a Muslim, right? Forget the people. Right? Focus on yourself, because you cannot help others if you don't help yourself. Reality of the world. You can't help, you can't give charity if you have no money yourself. Right? So we can use these little analogies to understand bigger concepts, and it still fits. So hopefully it makes sense to you, and I know that you're going to go away and ponder upon it. And the thing is, I like that you want to ponder upon it, because the Quran and indeed Allah praises and elevates those who are of high intellect, who ponder. And Allah says in the Quran repeatedly, you know, do you not think, do you not ponder, do you not reflect? He is encouraging for you to reflect and ponder so that you understand, so that you recognize the signs of the Creator, so that you recognize the guidance and accept it wholeheartedly because it makes sense, because you can apply it, because it will objectively be true. And that's the message of Islam. To worship God alone, to not associate any partners with Him, to follow the guidance that He has brought to you by the Messenger, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's that. That's all you need to believe. It's not much to believe. The rewards, the benefits that you reap from it is endless, if applied correct.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. It's definitely something I will be reflecting on. I've been through a lot. I've been through tough times, and during those tough times, I sat there and I thought about. And I suppose at times another thing. I'm 25, and you know, I've been through a lot of stuff when I was younger, and like a few years ago, and I was sitting there thinking, what is the meaning of life, if you will?
Yeah.
Why? What? I'm sat there, kind of thinking, there's got to be something. Why is there's just got to be, because all these other things are kind of really insignificant, you know. Is the bigger picture, and from then, now I've got out of that. I was in a bad place, and going from there to where I am now, that's a lot of strength, and I think there has to be something that got me to where I am now from where I was, and it's kind of reflection on those things and trying to kind of find myself in where
Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, please.
So that's that's the kind of thing. That's why I've been kind of trying to kind of find myself and where I fit into the world and that kind of stuff. And
what
gotta be something, hasn't there?
Yeah. don't know what that's about.
I think he's having his first VR experience.
Yeah, possibly.
He's roaming around.
Yeah, guess so.
It's all interesting, and like I say, I've sat down with one of my friends. She's a good friend of mine, and she's Muslim, and I see kind of the way that she lives her life and the kind of things that she, follows in a religious way, and it's kind of humbling in some ways compared to how I live my life at the moment, not having any of those things involved. And yeah, it's just I definitely feel there is something bigger. It's just kind of finding what that is, and it's nice to speak to people like yourselves. I'm very open about things, and I always want to learn. It's nice to hear from a different kind of point of view and kind of not be preached to, because I feel like a lot of people like myself feel like a lot of things that kind of hold them back from wanting to have these conversations is just the general thing. They feel like, oh, they're going to be preached kind of deal. So it's nice and refreshing to speak to someone and actually have you explain it to me a bit more and not be like, oh, no, yes, this, that, the other.
Yeah. So, because, even though we are calling you to Islam, we want it to make sense to you. So, yes, in a sense, we can call it preaching because we're still trying to invite you to Islam, but we do it in a way that we want you to accept it on your own grounds, on your own rationality. Because at the end of the day, you and I, we have the capacity to observe and reason in the same way. Because everything that I've provided very simple. Right? It's not something any complicated stuff. I don't go, I don't use any sort of PhD tactics to try and explain anything. Right? It's simple stuff, and yet we get it. Right? So you and I, we have that common ground where we can get things. So why not speak on that common ground? So, but yeah, I'm not gonna say anymore. You've got, a lot to reflect on, as it is. And I do hope you reflect on it, and I do want to see you back, and we'll have more discussions and stuff. It's definitely nice having you around. And yeah, so thank you for this conversation. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and the same. Thanks for
Just a quick question, Ali, if you don't mind. Do you know of the Real Speakers Corner? You sound like you're from the you have like a British accent a bit.
Yeah, I'm from the UK, but no, it's actually my first day here.
Oh, Speakers Corner is actually this VR experience is a template from the Real Speakers Corner in London, United Kingdom. People from all different walks of life come to discuss and debate. And a YouTube channel I would love to recommend to you, if you don't mind, would be EF DAWAH. They cover a lot of these discussions and debates, and they have live streams where they invite Christians and agnostics and atheists on to sort of challenge Islam, but as well present their own beliefs and their own understanding. And it's very cordial for the most part. So go ahead and give that to you. So that's EF DAWAH. Yeah, E is energy, F is in friendly, and then yeah, it's on the wall over there. That makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, and just to let you know that over there in that right corner, that's me. And so that's my picture in real life. That's who I am. And you have all my contact details there as well. Ammonite front.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's me in real life. And so yeah, if you've got any questions, you can contact me personally on any of those platforms. I'm most active on Twitter.
Yeah, and again, thanks for having that discussion. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. All right. Excellent. I'll let you enjoy the rest of the event and check other people out.
Have a look around, have a nosy.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, man.
No worries, mate. Cheers.
See you around. Thanks.
Yeah, take care. It was really enjoyable listening to you two discuss.
Alhamdulillah. No, that was a very good conversation.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.